So today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite heroes of all time, the web slinger himself, Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. More specifically, the alternate versions of Spider-Man. Now there are plenty of alternate versions out there, but I can't talk about all those. We'd be here all day. And I literally mean all day. You don't want to watch that. You don't want to do that. That's just a waste of a day. So we're going to be narrowing it down. These are my favorite. These are the ones that stand up to me, that are more famous ones, and also just the ones that I enjoy. So here they are. These are the alternate versions of Spider-Man. So Earth 616 Spider-Man is the original Spider-Man, the original Peter Parker, and that's the basis for all these alternate versions. We're not going to take a look at him because everybody knows that he's out there. We're going to start off with Spider-Man Noir. In the Marvel Noir universe, the counterparts to the superheroes we know gained their powers and abilities in the 1920s and the 30s, as opposed to the modern age. During the Great Depression, Peter Parker was raised by his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, who taught Peter to take a stand against injustice. Uncle Ben is an activist, organizing strikes on the behalf of poorly treated workers. This upsets prominent businessmen, and Uncle Ben was killed. Working as a journalist, Peter investigates shady dealings in his attempt to seek out justice for Uncle Ben. After receiving a tip, Peter ventured to a warehouse where a broken spider statue unleashes a spider that bites Parker, leaving him to a dream of a mystical spider god and it grants him incredible arachnid powers. Now this is a much darker take on the Spider-Man mythos, as Peter had no aversion to using pistols or even killing. Earth 15 Spider-Man. Now on Earth 15, Spider-Man is an insane, psychopathic killer who bonded with the Carnage symbiote. He was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences, and eventually he was placed on the Weapon X team because the original members were all killed off. He was generally rude and very much disliked Sabretooth, the leader. Spider-Girl. In an alternate reality, Peter Parker and his wife Mary Jane live a happy life with their young daughter May. Peter's still Spider-Man though, and after losing one of his legs in a battle with the Green Goblin, he decides to retire and focus on being a father and a husband. Even though Peter and Mary Jane shield May from her father's exploits, she develops her own powers during high school. Despite rejections from her parents, she used her newfound abilities and sense of justice and began to fight crime. She first appeared in a What If storyline, but went on to have her own book, which went on to be the longest running comic by Marvel to feature a female lead. The Spider. In the limited series Marvel's 1602, all our favorite heroes appeared centuries ago in the Elizabethan era, not in the modern age. Peter Parker is the assistant to the great Sir Nicholas Fury, and they both serve Queen Elizabeth. Parker's transformation into Spider-Man was teased throughout the 8-part series with numerous comedic run-ins with various exotic spiders. At the end though, Peter was finally bitten and then appeared in a spin-off series, The Spider. Superior Spider-Man. While visiting a dying Otto Octavius, Peter Parker suddenly had his mind swiped of Dr. Octopus, allowing Otto to live and run around in Peter's body. Just before Peter died, Otto discovered the true meaning of "with great power comes great responsibility" and decided to become a hero, carrying on Parker's legacy. Otto did all he could to be a hero, but his violent ways of punishing criminals always came out. In reality, he was depleting people of their freedom while accidentally letting others get away with crimes. In the end though, Peter came back and the true Spider-Man returned. Spider-Man India. On Earth 50101, Pavitri Prabhakar is his world's Spider-Man. Prabhakar is an Indian boy who hails from a remote village, but is able to move to Mumbai with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Ben. Pavitar is ostracized at school, his only friend being the popular girl Meera Jain. One day, Prabhakar meets a yogi who grants him the power of a spider in order to fight an evil crime lord named Nalan Oberoi, who is possessed by a demon. Now, Spider-Man India has some clever deviations from his American counterpart, but he still retains everything that made his American counterpart so great. And so sorry for all those terrible pronunciations. Not good at that. Amalgam Spider-Man. The Amalgam universe is a crossover between Marvel and DC, where they combine two characters into one. In this case, Spider-Man and Superboy form Spider-Boy. He has the ability to manipulate gravity, which allows him to climb up walls, jump very far, and he has super strength. He also has a futuristic web shooter pistol, which shoots synthetic spiderwebs to tangle up his enemies. Spider-Ham. Originally intended to just be a parody, Spider-Ham has actually proven himself to be a popular and lovable incarnation of Spider-Man. So basically, in this universe, Earth is populated by anthropomorphic animals, and Parker, a normal everyday spider, lives in the basement of May Porker, a slightly eccentric inventor. One day, May invents an atomic hair dryer with the idea of revolutionizing the hair care industry. Eager to test it out, May accidentally irradiates herself and then proceeds to bite Peter, turning him into a pig like May. Peter is shocked and confused, but he realizes that while he's now a pig, he still has all the abilities of a spider. He then decided to fight crime as Spider-Ham, facing off against such villains as Dr. Doom and Raven the Hunter. Spider-Gwen. Now, Gwen Stacy has always been an essential character in the Spider-Man mythos, and being Peter Parker's first love and the first person that he couldn't save. Since she has now been dead for decades, the alternate Gwen Stacy from Earth 65 was a breath of fresh air. In this reality, it was Gwen, not Peter, who was bitten by the radioactive spider. She now fights crime as Spider-Woman, and Peter Parker is a nerdy outcast who idolizes the hero. He develops a chemical formula that turns him into the Lizard, but when Gwen stops him, Peter's actually killed. Spider-Gwen became an instantly popular hero with an incredible design, and she has so much potential for great stories. MCU Spider-Man. We don't really know much about this variation of Spider-Man, and we won't until Spider-Man Homecoming, but I was just so excited to see him finally be able to put him on this list. He's adorable and perfect, and that's my Spider-Man. That right there, he's home. Zombie Spider-Man. The Spider-Man of Earth 2149 was identical to the main continuity Spider-Man until the zombie virus hit. This virus quickly hit all of the world's superhumans, turning them into lumbering, flesh-eating zombies with an insatiable hunger for flesh. During all of the commotion, the hunger becomes too much for Parker, and he kills and devours both Mary Jane and Aunt May. What's twisted about this version of Spider-Man is that he still feels remorse for all the atrocities, proving that even in death, Parker is still haunted by a sense of responsibility. Spider-Man 2099. Back in the early 90s, Marvel experimented with a line of comics with the 2099 suffix, which reimagined pre-existing characters in a dystopian, not-so-distant future. While public reaction was mixed, one character stood up from the crowd: Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara is a geneticist with Alchemax Corporation, one of the many mega corporations that run the world. He's tasked with creating a super soldier, so Miguel looks at the surviving records of his world's Peter Parker, known to the public only as Spider-Man. He continued his research, but O'Hara's genetic code was accidentally spliced with a spider, causing him to gain numerous abilities similar to those of his hero. Miguel decided to embrace the spirit of Spider-Man and decided to use his powers to stand up for those who cannot. Scarlet Spider. Way back in 1975, Spider-Man readers were introduced to a clone of Peter Parker cooked up by the Jackal. Leading this clone to believe that he was actually the real Peter Parker, the Jackal forced the clone and the real Peter Parker to fight. Ultimately, the clone's sense of morality outweighed his jealousy and anger, leading the two Spider-Men to fight the Jackal together. The resulting battle cost the clone his life, or so he thought. The clone is brought back in the 90s, where the clone's named himself Ben Reilly and sets out on his own, leaving New York City. Ben has proven himself to be a fan favorite, maybe because he has the most 90s outfit of all time. But also, he's a person of depth and a selfless hero. Ultimate Universe Spider-Man. For over a decade, readers were treated to a new retelling of Peter Parker, as he fought familiar villains and dealt with the struggle of balancing his civilian life with his heroic alter ego. Unfortunately, Peter was killed during a battle of Green Goblin, so a new hero stepped up to take his place, Miles Morales. Miles is half black, half Latino, making him one of the most prominent minority characters in comics. Initially reluctant to become a hero, he has stepped into the role and earned the title Spider-Man in both the comics and among the fanbase, becoming incredibly popular, and rightly so. So that's it. Those are just some of the alternate versions of Spider-Man. Sound off in the comments down below. Let me know what your favorite alternate version is. Do you like any of the alternates better than the original? Also, if you have any ideas for future videos, sound off in the comments down there too. And be sure to hit the subscribe button for more videos like this every week. So today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite heroes of all time. The web slinger himself, Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. More specifically, the alternate versions of Spider-Man. Now, there are plenty of alternate versions out there, but I can't talk about all those. We'd be here all day. And I literally mean all day. You don't want to watch that. You don't want to do that. That's just a waste of a day. So we're going to be narrowing it down. These are my favorite. These are the ones that stand out to me, that are more famous ones, and also just the ones that I enjoy. So here they are. These are the alternate versions of Spider-Man. So Earth 616 Spider-Man is the original Spider-Man, the original Peter Parker, and that's the basis for all these alternate versions. Uncle Ben is an activist, organizing strikes on the behalf of poorly treated workers. This upsets prominent businessmen, and Uncle Ben was killed. Working as a journalist, Peter investigates shady dealings in his attempt to seek out justice for Uncle Ben. After receiving a tip, Peter ventured to a warehouse where a broken spider statue unleashes a spider that bites Parker, leaving him to a dream of a mystical spider god and grants him incredible arachnid powers. Now, this is a much darker take on the Spider-Man mythos, as Peter had no aversion to using pistols or even killing. Earth 15 Spider-Man. Now, on Earth 15, Spider-Man is an insane, psychopathic killer who bonded with agents. We're not going to take a look at him because everybody knows that he's out there. We're going to start off with Spider-Man Noir. In the Marvel Noir universe, the counterparts to the superheroes we know gained their powers and abilities in the 1920s and the 30s, as opposed to the modern age. During the Great Depression, Peter Parker was raised by his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, who taught Peter to take a stand against injustice